Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. On behalf of the Center for Learning Innovations and Customized Knowledge Solution, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to another insightful session of our In Conversation with Click series. Today, we turn our attention to a critical and timely theme: quality assurance in the era of transformation, embracing new trends in higher education. We are thrilled to be joined this evening by participants from more than 50 countries, representing diverse backgrounds, perspectives, and experiences. Your presence today with us reflects the growing global commitment towards advancing quality assurance while embracing changes and ensuring agility in today's evolving higher education landscape. As we navigate rapid transformations driven by technological advancements, shifts in learners' expectations, global disruptions, quality assurance must evolve beyond compliance to become a driver of innovation, adaptability, and continuous improvement. We hope that today's session, we will provide you with a platform to reflect on these emerging trends, address some of the challenges associated with them, and explore opportunities that will help us shape the future of higher education quality. Just a couple of announcements before we start. Throughout the keynote address and the panel, we do invite our participants to ask questions to our very highly qualified and esteemed panel. Please do use the Q&A session, not the chat box, to put your questions so that we can address them. At the end of the session in the chat box, you will also get a link from which you can issue your certificate of attendance. And after the session, you will receive an email asking your perspectives or your views into the session of today. We look forward to a stimulating and insightful discussion. Once again, welcome to everyone, and let's get started. We are honored to commence our evening today with a keynote address on global perspectives on quality assurance, trends, challenges, and opportunities that will be delivered by Vicky Stott, Chief Executive of the Quality Assurance Agency in the UK and current President of the International Network for Quality Assurance Agencies in Higher Education in COHE. Dr. Vicky, the floor is yours. I think you will be sharing the slides from your end, right?
I hope so. I hope that's not going to defeat me, but let's try it and see. Let me try to share my screen. Oh, it doesn't actually want to give me the opportunity to share things that are on. Oh, here we are, Microsoft PowerPoint. Now then. I'm afraid I have a technical difficulty at this end where I cannot share without leaving the meeting and coming back to it. So
we do have a backup of your slides if you wanted us to share them.
That would be wonderful. I'm sorry for the complication.
No worries at all. Udaya, would you mind sharing them, please?
Thank you very much. So, with apologies for the slight delay and my technical incompetence, I'm just waiting for Udaya to find the slides. Here we are. Thank you so much, Udaya. I really appreciate it. Wonderful. We can see, perfect, lovely, thank you. And if I just say next slide, please, when I get to that point today, thank you so much. So distinguished guests and esteemed colleagues, it's a real pleasure to be with you today. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very envious because I think most of you are in parts of the world that are far warmer than the UK. And I'm sitting here swaddled in blankets and trying not to shiver while I speak to you. I am honoured and delighted to have been invited by CLIX to give this keynote address. I've had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Nariman in person a couple of times, and several QAA quality experts have presented at CLIX events across the MENA region over the last few years, and it's always a real honor to be able to do so. In this presentation, I'm going to be speaking to you about trends, challenges, and opportunities in global quality assurance, drawing upon QAA's experience in the UK higher education sector, a dynamic and fast-changing environment which has seen numerous changes in regulatory and quality assurance landscapes in the last few years. Udaya, can we have the next slide, please? So I wanted to start my presentation by giving you a little bit of background about myself. My name is Vicky Stott, and I am the CEO of the Quality Assurance Agency, the UK's independent body for tertiary education and higher education quality assurance, and an international expert body in quality assurance and enhancement. I've also recently had the great honour of being elected as the president of INQAHE, the International Network for Quality Assurance Agencies for Higher Education. I have served on their board of directors since 2021, and I've also been chief executive of QAA since 2021, having first joined that agency as the deputy chief exec and executive director of operations back in 2019. My career in UK higher education has spanned over 2 decades, where I've had the opportunity to oversee functions including strategic planning, academic services, and international relations. Just before I came to QAA, I was part of the leadership team of St Hugh's College, one of the colleges of the University of Oxford, where I was Chief Operating Officer and Bursar. Udaya, could I have the next slide, please? So, to give you some context about QAA, the agency has been around for 27 years. We were founded in 1997 as an independent agency that could offer advice on the maintenance and enhancement of quality and standards in UK higher education institutions. Over our history, the scope and size of the UK higher education system has changed greatly, and so too has the focus of our work. Across the breadth of our work, we remain committed to our central mission of ensuring that learners experience the highest possible quality of education. Students play a pivotal role in the oversight and development of QAA's work. And indeed, during our most recent review by the European Association for Quality Assurance in Higher Education, known as ENQA, QAA was commended by the review team for the exemplary involvement of students in our organisation and in our quality procedures. The way QAA operates is through compliance with the pioneering European standards and guidelines for quality assurance. And that means that we're one of the agencies listed on the European Quality Assurance Register, an indicator of the robust nature and the rigour of the work that we undertake, and of the trust that international stakeholders can put in that work and in the providers whose quality we assess. Could I have the next slide, please, Udaya? So today, I wanted to talk about 2 overarching and significant trends in global higher education quality assurance. The first is a shift towards tertiary education, and the second is the digitalization of education and the growth of artificial intelligence. Each trend is, of course, both a challenge for us to grapple with and an opportunity for us to grasp. So can I take the next slide, please, Udaya? I'm going to start with the shift towards the tertiary education environment. And one of the key shifts we've seen in the past few years is the broadening of the lens of higher education to encompass the whole of the tertiary education sector. We're seeing this very clearly in 2 of the nations of the UK, Scotland and Wales. The tertiary education sector in Scotland comprises colleges who deliver a range of pre-degree qualifications, including vocational and technical education, and some degrees and other higher education qualifications on the one hand, and then on the other hand, universities who mostly deliver degrees. And reflecting this policy shift, Scotland's funder regulator, the Scottish Funding Council, in collaboration with the whole of the tertiary sector, has this year launched Scotland's Tertiary Quality Enhancement Framework. Udaya, could I have the next slide, please? So the framework, which is known as TQEF, reflects the strengths of the previous quality enhancement frameworks and of quality arrangements previously applied within Scotland's college sector, and it comprises 4 key principles. The first is excellence in learning, teaching and assessment. The second is supporting student success. The third is developing an enhancement and quality culture. And the fourth is student engagement and partnership. Like the previous system, enhancement-led institutional review and whole sector collaboration on shared enhancement priorities will continue as key mechanisms of this new approach. But what makes the new arrangements so exciting is their tertiary-wide focus, using a single quality review method for all college and university provision is a novel and innovative concept for the UK, and it reflects Scotland's worldwide reputation for pioneering approaches to quality. Previously, a government-owned inspectorate reviewed colleges. Now, all colleges and universities will be reviewed by an independent body through processes of review involving students and professional peers. QAA has been instrumental in developing these new arrangements and has worked closely with other educational agencies, with staff and with students to deliver a quality review method and enhancement approach that reflects the needs of all providers, of staff and of students in the tertiary education sector. Udaya, could I have the next slide, please? But Scotland is not the only UK nation to explore a tertiary approach to quality arrangements. In Wales, an equally exciting tertiary journey has just begun, following the passing of the Tertiary Education and Research in Wales Act through Welsh Parliament in 2022. This legislation signalled an intent to move towards greater collaboration and coherence across the post-compulsory education and training system in Wales. One of the key outputs of the Act has been the creation of the Commission for Tertiary Education and Research, which is known as MEDA, and that replaced the Higher Education Funding Council for Wales as the funding and regulatory body in Wales for the entire tertiary education sector. Udaya, could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. MEDA came into creation last year, and it is in the process of establishing its regulatory system within Wales, including the creation of a register of higher education providers, which will be completed by 2026, and the development of a single quality framework for the whole of tertiary education. Unlike Scotland, although there will be a single quality framework, all forms of tertiary education will not be reviewed through a single method, but instead in Wales, pre-degree qualifications will continue to be inspected by the Inspectorate Body for Education in Wales, Estyn. QAA is currently responsible for carrying out the external quality review of higher education in Wales, and we expect to continue this arrangement as part of the new regulatory system overseen by MEDA. The Welsh Government has also made clear in its priorities for the new regulatory body that the quality system should align with international standards such as the European Standards and Guidelines. And with a single framework for quality, there is an expectation that MEDA and QAA will work closely together to identify opportunities for collaboration. For example, combining the intelligence that both organisations have built of the tertiary system in Wales through our respective quality assurance and inspection activity, we could produce joint thematic reports comparing certain practices in further and higher education, for example, assessment design or artificial intelligence. And this type of joint activity would support colleges and universities to learn from best practice across the tertiary system and support smoother transition for students progressing from pre-degree qualifications into degree qualifications. Udaya, could I have the next slide, please? So this trend towards tertiary education systems comes with many opportunities. Bringing together a focus on skills, training, micro-credentials and academic programmes promotes flexible delivery models with online, hybrid and part-time learning opportunities catering to students whose time commitments and needs vary. Tertiary education also emphasises continuous skills development through a person's life, opening up opportunities for reskilling and upskilling. And this is in line with other trends towards micro-credentials and lifelong learning. In the UK, there are big system changes expected next year with the Lifelong Learning Entitlement, which is a new system that will expand funding to encompass modular and flexible provision across the whole of the tertiary system. However, there are, of course, challenges to contend with in relation to standardisation issues and ensuring that qualifications and standards are aligned within a unified framework. There is also an issue of scale, with the need to recruit significant numbers of reviewers to enable the implementation of these new frameworks, which now require us to review more providers than ever before. And indeed, our most recent round of reviewer recruitment has increased our number of reviewers to a pool of around 600 people. Could I have the next slide, please, Udaya? The next key trend that I want to discuss today is the digitalization of education, particularly assuring and enhancing the quality of AI transformed higher education and how quality assurance agencies can stay ahead of this curve. When ChatGPT launched as an open access tool in November 2022, higher education sectors across the globe quickly became concerned about its impact on academic standards and quality in learning and teaching. 2 years on, ChatGPT is now one of very many generative AI tools that are available on the internet. Whether they're text generators or picture generators, video generators, code generators, PowerPoint slide deck generators, some paywalled, some free, all of them easily accessible. This technology is already rapidly changing the world of work. Excuse me. It is clear that graduates will need to know how to use these tools critically, effectively, and with integrity in the workplace. Indeed, graduates who have advanced critical AI literacy are likely to be more competitive than graduates who don't. And so the higher education sector has a role to play in supporting the development of graduates who have critical AI literacy. But just as important is the need for the higher education sector to protect academic standards and to maintain quality in the face of these technology. Generative AI tools force higher education sectors to think about the way they deliver higher education and how they might need to adapt in response to these tools. In many ways, generative AI tools accelerate the need for the sector to reckon with questions they should perhaps have tackled a while ago. What is the right balance of skills and knowledge in a course? Are we too reliant on the essay as a form of assessment? Are we assessing students in a way that is authentic to their life after graduation? The ubiquity of generative AI necessitates a transformation of higher education. It is neither feasible nor desirable to try and put the genie back in the bottle. Now, higher education sectors across the globe will need to embrace AI with appropriate safeguards and caveats in order to future-proof provision, to support students into the labour market, and to realise its potential to facilitate, democratise, and deepen learning. One of the chief concerns associated with generative AI tools in higher education is the issue of academic integrity, whether or not a student's work can be trusted to be their own, and therefore an accurate reflection of their learning. And to complicate things, AI detection tools are not a reliable solution. Research now shows that AI detection tools are more likely to wrongfully flag the work of particular students, such as neurodivergent students or non-native English speakers, as AI generated. And that poses significant equity issues when using these tools. Moreover, students with the financial means to access more sophisticated tools are more likely to be able to evade either manual or technological detection. But perhaps most importantly, approaches to academic integrity that rely solely on detection do not account for the possibility of reasonable co-creation between a student and generative AI tools. Given that students will have to have critical AI literacy skills in the labour market, reasonable co-creation is likely to be an important way to develop those skills throughout a student's degree. And by reasonable co-creation and critical skills, I mean teaching students how to acknowledge their use of AI, how to critique the output that AI gives them, and how to use their own knowledge, skill, and understanding to shape that output, so that really they are looking to AI as an enabler rather than a surrogate. Looking to the future, it is likely that human AI hybrid writing will become the norm, in the same way that human Google hybrid or human spell check writing already is. The notion of human AI hybrid writing is one of 6 factors that Professor Sarah Eaton describes as defining a post-plagiarism world. The transformation of higher education needs to take into account this likely future. Udayo, could I have the next slide, please? And so with a post-plagiarism world in mind, the most effective approaches to academic integrity are likely to be upstream interventions that focus more on developing a deep understanding among students about what is and isn't good practice, partnering with them in developing their own learning experience and journey to increase engagement, and intentionally designing generative AI into the curriculum to build critical AI literacy. If broad trust in academic integrity declines, so too does the value of a degree where stakeholders cannot trust that a student's achievement was gained honestly and genuinely. Given the challenges to academic integrity, one of the best and most sustainable responses to generative AI tools that higher education providers can implement is a review and a refresh of their assessment approaches. At all levels, the education system relies heavily on the assumption that an assessment output, like an essay, is evidence that a learning process has taken place. But generative AI tools mean that outputs can be produced with no learning process having taken place. There is increasing research that suggests AI tools can produce assessment outputs that not only fool academic staff, but are often marked higher than student-produced equivalents. Dr. Brenna Clark-Gray queries whether the reason we're concerned that robots can write like humans is that we have trained our learners to write like robots. It is important to reflect on why we assess students and on how we assess them. This might involve thinking through the right balance of formative and summative assessments, the balance of knowledge transfer versus skills acquisition, and whether the output or learning process is the focus of assessment, and to what extent we have succeeded in ensuring that assessment represents a constructive and essential part of learning processes. Across UK universities, a common approach is emerging, whereby assessments have some kind of AI scale articulated on assessment briefs. Simply put, assessments might completely prohibit any use of generative AI tools. They might specify particular ways in which the tools are permitted to be used, or they might specify that using generative AI tools is expected in completing the assessment. And by using a consistent framework that allows local flexibility within a provider, students are given clear information about what is expected of them in each assessment, and providers are forced to think about what the most appropriate assessment approach for each individual set of learning outcomes is. It should be noted that even a fully transformed higher education experience that embraces AI in learning and teaching can present challenges. Students from more affluent backgrounds are likely to have greater access to personal devices, to high-speed internet, and to superior generative AI software, as I said, allowing them to leverage these tools more effectively and giving them an inequitable advantage. The digital divide within providers can exacerbate existing inequalities, as students from wealthier backgrounds may have greater opportunities to explore AI-powered learning experiences and develop the skills they need to succeed in the digital age. As these tools become more sophisticated, it will be important for higher education providers to consider how they might help level the playing field for students to mitigate risks around inequality. Over time, even if students use generative AI tools critically and ethically and in line with their providers' expectations, it is still possible that students might be more capable when assisted by AI. And this could see the proportion of upper class degrees increase and potentially undermine public trust in the value of a degree. In a world where academic standards are under pressure, externality becomes increasingly important. Reviewing and improving approaches to externality, such as cyclical review and external examiners, will become increasingly important in order to maintain public trust in academic standards. Could I have the next slide, please, Hudaya? So, for external quality assurance agencies like QAA, there will be a live question over the coming years as to whether the advent of generative AI and its integration into learning and teaching necessitates a review of academic standards. If a human-AI hybrid world becomes the norm and students are capable of more when they're assisted by AI, there might be an argument to recalibrate academic standards to take into account the increased expectations of student achievement. And clearly, as the sector transforms to the existence of Gen AI tools, our definition or perception of what high quality is might also come to differ. For example, since the pandemic, there is significantly more digital learning provision across sectors, much of which is high quality and is increasingly trusted by students, by quality agencies, and by the public. External quality assurance now views digital learning as just as legitimate a delivery model as traditional provision. And in the same way, teaching with AI integrated assessment and building critical AI literacy are likely to be hallmarks of high quality provision. External quality assurance needs to be able to recognize it and commend it where it's done well. As quality assurance agencies, we have a responsibility to ensure that the ways that we assure and enhance quality are fit for the future. This means remaining responsive to trends and developments, including the move towards the integration of the tertiary education sector and the rise of artificial intelligence, and the implications this has for academic integrity. But it also means continuing to work together to share possible solutions to these common challenges in events such as the one that we're sharing today. We need to continue to adapt to the needs of the sector and fundamentally to the needs and aspirations of our learners, who are at the heart of everything we do, to ensure not only that we maintain the quality of our provision in the face of these challenges, but also that we develop strategies whereby these challenges become opportunities to help us enhance what we do, to work in partnership with learners to transform for the better societies, economies, and so many people's lives. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vicky, for a truly insightful presentation. I think that your perspective on the shift towards a more dynamic tertiary education environment and the rise of AI and digitalization demonstrate just how much higher education is evolving. And the opportunities definitely, as you've mentioned, for flexible models of learning, for opportunities for skilling and upskilling and lifelong learning are evident. But at the same time, as you rightly mentioned, the rise of modern technologies such as generative AI and other technologies challenges us really to rethink academic integrity, assessment design, and quality monitoring as a whole, both internally and externally. So that makes it more important than ever for quality assurance to stay agile and innovative and responsive, and ensuring that when we talk about AI, we harness AI potential while still maintaining trust and academic standards. Before we proceed to our panel, maybe we'd like to take a few questions from the audience. We have with us Dr. Mahinor. I think she's looked into some of the questions and she can ask you the questions so that we can save time and take as many as possible. Dr. Mahinor.
Thank you, Dr. Nariman. Thank you so much, Vicky, for this insightful presentation, sharing the trends, challenges, and opportunities that we are facing. We have some interesting questions here. So the first one is, how can we have reliable assessment of learning in the face of generative AI?
That's a really good question. And you're probably not surprised to know that it's one that we are asked a lot. And I think I would really challenge people to think about, what is assessment for? Is assessment a way of students simply repeating what they have learned, repeating what we have taught them to demonstrate that they've heard us? Or is assessment a way of testing that they have taken what we've taught them and can apply it to real world skills? Now, if the former, then absolutely the kind of traditional unseen paper relying heavily on essays or work that allows for the repeat of what we've told them, that's the way forward. But I think increasingly what I'm hearing from universities and from governments and from employers is that what they're looking for is students who are equipped with the skills to take their learning and to apply it to situations. So if your assessment reflects that, if your assessment poses real problems to students and asks them to solve those problems, then that is less scope in there for them to use AI to answer that question, or to use AI wholly to answer that question. They need to be able to apply what they're being told and to use reasonable tools, perhaps including AI tools, to solve the problems, but it really allows them to demonstrate their knowledge. And I think that's a far more reliable assessment form than simply an unseen paper and a series of essays.
Thank you, Vicky. We have another question here. Can we expect QA agencies such as QAA to update their standards to include assessment criteria or standards to negate the negative impact of AI?
Well, the short and not very informative answer to that is yes. So I think QAA, and I'm sure the quality assurance agencies on the call, are quite rigorous about reviewing the academic standards and the frameworks that we have in place on a cyclical basis anyway. So, for example, we have very recently completed a very comprehensive review of the Quality Code, which is the document which governs quality across all 4 nations of the UK. And as part of that, we haven't explicitly mentioned how AI should or shouldn't be integrated into quality processes, but we have allowed for that possibility. And the code will be supported over the next 12 to 18 months with a comprehensive raft of advice and guidance on each of the principles of the code. The code itself looks at principles and practices around academic standards and quality, and sets out a series of expectations, but it is for each provider to interpret that within their own context, using their own kind of autonomy. And the advice and guidance will talk about how that might adapt to particular situations like the growth of AI.
Good. We have another question here. Can students develop assessments? Can we harness their sense of fair play?
I think that's a really good question, actually. Yeah. I don't see why not. I mean, I genuinely believe that we should treat students as experts in their own learning. They are far better informed than us about what they need to know and what they expect to do with the education that we're helping them develop. And if we are genuine about education being a co-created experience, and I speak all the time to academics who say that they learn as much from their students as their students learn from them, then I don't see why we shouldn't trust students to be involved in the design of their assessments. I think if we go back to the example of the unseen paper, clearly there is something wrong if we're asking students to write the paper and then sit the paper. But I don't see why, in principle, students couldn't design the nature of their assessment or talk about the form of assessment that would be useful to them without actually necessarily getting involved in designing the content of that assessment.
Thank you. We have a question about using some sort of tools to recruit academics. What are your thoughts? So what about using certain tools to recruit academics?
I mean, I think to some extent, we probably have always used tools to recruit academics. It's just that those tools have changed over time. The nature of them have changed over time. So I think if we're talking about artificial intelligence tools, they are hugely helpful in recruitment processes, both for academics and actually for students. I think you know, it's easy to get an AI to do a first sift of applications to kind of compare candidates' CVs against the requirements of the person spec, for example. And I think, you know, on a sort of higher level than that, it's very difficult to expect academics to teach something or to teach the use of something that they're not themselves to some degree familiar with. And I don't see why we couldn't get AI to train academics in the use of AI, for example. So yes, I think there are uses for these AI tools that we have yet to imagine. And I think how we put them into our service in the running of an institution is just as interesting a question as how we put them into service in the education that we're providing.
Yeah, for the sake of time, we're going to take the last question, and then maybe afterwards you can post your questions for Vicky to answer. So how does QAA plan to evolve its regulatory frameworks to ensure academic integrity while also acknowledging AI as an integral part of learning, assessment, and professional competency? That's a good question.
It is a very good question.
Yeah.
So our academic frameworks are permissive rather than prescriptive. And they also apply slightly differently in the different nations of the UK. So it's a slightly complex question to answer. So without getting down into the weeds of detail because of the time, I would say that the evolution of them is kind of always alive to developments in the sector, and indeed in some of our academic frameworks around particular subject benchmarks, for example, you know, there's a sort of 5-yearly cycle of reviewing exactly what is new. So those things will automatically be updated for the uses of artificial intelligence within disciplines and as tools for learning. But our frameworks are about the preservation of standards rather than the delivery of standards. So to that extent, they will be conscious of the impact of AI, just as they're conscious of the impact of an expanding tertiary landscape, but they won't necessarily need to update every time the technology itself evolves.
Yeah, true. Thank you so much, Vicky, and thank you, participants, for your questions. Back to you, Dr. Nariman.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Vicky. We have a really good number of questions. If Vicky, you were able to stay behind a bit and see some of the questions, because there's really good ones, and we'll try to address as many as possible. But we also have a panel that is going to actually address many of the points that were raised by our participants here. So let me introduce our panel and our panelists. Our panel is on transforming external quality assurance to align with the needs of modern higher education. And I think that from what we heard from Vicky and what we've been talking about, as higher education undergoes rapid transformation, quality assurance frameworks must evolve to remain relevant and responsive. This panel brings together distinguished experts and leaders of national quality assurance agencies to examine how quality systems, both external and institutional, can effectively align to emerging trends, not just only AI and digitalization, but also the emphasis on sustainability, on internationalization, the raising industry and employers' demands and needs from the higher education sector. Our discussion hopefully will highlight the vital role of external quality assurance in upholding quality standards while enabling institutional innovation and agility. Lastly, we hope that our very highly esteemed panelists will provide practical recommendations for higher education institutions to align their internal quality assurance practices with the evolving educational landscape and the expectation of their external quality assurance agencies, ensuring that they remain adaptive, forward-thinking, and impactful. Our ultimate aim this evening is really to foster an ongoing dialogue and explore ways by which quality assurance can serve as a catalyst for institutional innovation and continuous enhancement, rather than focusing only or merely on compliance. I am honored to have to be joined today by distinguished the distinguished panel of esteemed professionals whose vast expertise speaks for itself. I will not do them justice by trying to capture their experience in few lines. Along with us today, we have Dr. Samira Al-Mulla, Acting Director at the Commission for Academic Accreditation at the Ministry of Higher Education. We also have with us Dr. Ala El-Shammawi, President of the National Authority for Quality Assurance and Accreditation of Education in Egypt. Dr. Mazen Hasna, Chairman of the National Committee of Qualification and Academic Accreditation in the State of Qatar. Dr. Jokha bin Abdullah Al-Shukaili, CEO of the Oman Authority for Academic Accreditation and Quality Assurance of Education in Oman, and Dr. Diana Al-Jahroumi, Secretary General of the Higher Education Council in Bahrain. Unfortunately, we were supposed to have with us today Professor Dafer Al-Saraira from the Accreditation and Quality Assurance Commission for Higher Education Institution in Jordan. However, he could not make it this evening. So thank you very much to our esteemed panel. And I would like to basically start by asking them a round of questions. I'm sure that our participants will really appreciate their views and their perspective. And to begin our discussion, I would like to ask all of our panelists pretty much the same question. And I think it was raised by some of our participants today. National quality assurance frameworks and standards worldwide are continuously evolving to keep pace with rapid technological advancement, increasing diverse student population, stronger emphasis on employability and industry collaboration, and growing global competition. How have quality assurance frameworks in your respective countries adapted to these emerging trends? Could you possibly share some specific examples of successful innovations or policies that have been implemented? And perhaps we can start the discussion with Her Excellency Dr. Samira Al-Mulla, given that the CAA has recently announced significant reforms and updates in its standards and quality assurance process. Dr. Samira.
Yeah. Thank you, Nariman. Thank you, Vicky, and nice to see you virtually again. You said it very right, Nariman, that and I would like to welcome all of the participants and attendees today. So the quality assurance framework in United Arab Emirates undergone a significant transformation to align with global trends. As Vicky said, now once the journey is outside, now, I think it's not wise to try and put all the efforts to get him back from where he went out. So the Commission for Academic Accreditation, the CAA, has recently introduced the outcome-based evaluation framework. What is the most paradigm shift that happened here? We are moving away from input process-oriented compliance framework to outcome-based impact-oriented framework. So in this framework, we were trying to ensure that institutions are evaluated based on measurable outcomes with 6 main key pillars. So the first key pillar is the employment outcome, where graduates' employability, relevance of jobs to their field of study is getting measured. The second pillar, which is learning outcome, where students' competencies, skills validation, retention rates are considered. The third one is industry collaboration. The fourth one, which is common and which is important also when it comes to the academia and higher education, which is research outcome. The fifth pillar, which is reputation, it includes the international ranking and international accreditation first, on the level of institution programs and global collaboration, in addition to the rankings. Community engagement, I think this is, most of them are new, but this in particular is very important. I attended one of the speeches in recently Global Government Summit in Dubai that happened in February, where most of the expertise in AI, they were encouraging industry and institutes to go for more, to focus more on human behavior and human interaction, since AI will take over most of the routine and most of the operations. So one of the key innovations under this framework is the risk-based monitoring system, which categorizes institutions based on performance, enabling a proactive approach to quality assurance. Institutions demonstrating excellence receiving regularity, flexibility, while those needing improvement receive structured guidance. So it's not only that we are ranking, or let's say we are classifying the universities, it's also that there will be support provided to the universities that needs more enhancements and rewards for those highly performing universities. So this is in a nutshell the approach that we are adopting right now. So universities will be assessed, evaluated, licensed, and accredited based on outcome-based evaluation framework. We are relaxing, we are giving the freedom to the universities to be creative, innovative, adopt the technology, but ensure the outcomes and impact is guaranteed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Samira, for the very insightful answer of yours. And I'm sure we're going to pick up on many of the points that you have highlighted. But let's hear from other colleagues on the panel. Dr. Ala, maybe the same question to you. You can share with us some examples of what in Egypt is happening very specifically in line with, adapting to emerging trends and ensuring that quality assurance continue to be agile. Professor Ala.
Sure. In Egypt, there are a lot of changes in the marketplace. The employment and the job market is evolving very rapidly. There is a lot of interest in programs that combine academic and vocational aspects, practical or applied type qualifications. And as a result of this, the standards for accreditation are evolving very rapidly. So to keep up with this change, we're looking at two things happening at the same time. The first is linking the competencies of the graduates to the skills that are required and competencies that are required in the market, in the job market. This is very important, and we're forming what's called the sector skill councils for the vocational education, and that includes vocational education extending to what's called technological universities. So just over the past 2 years, there are more than 10 technological universities that have opened, and the model is basically mimicking what happened in many countries in Europe, where the link between the education and the job market is the gap is being closed. And so what we're looking at is we view the new standards, or the standards that are being revised, basically look at the graduate and the attributes or the skills of the graduate being at the core of what the quality assurance process is. We put less emphasis on things like governance, strategic planning, and so on, and we're putting more emphasis on what the graduates, what the competencies and the attributes of the graduate are. The other thing that's happening is the emergence of a lot of smaller credentials and micro-credentials, basically, that are also filling in a lot of gaps that are in place in the traditional 4-year tertiary degree. There are people who want to supplement their education either while they are studying or after they graduate, and some people come back 2 and 3 and 5 and 10 years after graduation and want to upskill their portfolio. So for those, we have to have also criteria for quality assurance of these micro-credentials. So there was a change in the law that governs our organization in Egypt 2 years ago, and the accreditation of what's called the training institutions and programs. The word training is probably just a translation from Arabic, is not the best word, but it's basically continuous or continuing education and capacity building. How do we accredit the large number of providers and awarding bodies that is, evolving on a daily basis. And how do we evaluate the programs to see that they are in line with the needs of the job market? So these two aspects are at the forefront of the changes, the evolution of our quality assurance system in Egypt.
Thank you very much, Professor Ala, and I think we will touch upon later on in the panel on this issue of, developing the graduate skills to meet the industry and so forth. May I ask the same question to Dr. Diana from Bahrain? Maybe we can have your perspective on what is happening.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So at the Kingdom of Bahrain, we've been very proactive in being a pioneer in adopting our quality assurance frameworks. We're addressing emerging trends such as digital transformation, employability, and global competitiveness. So for example, we're looking at our institutional review framework. We collaboratively with the Quality Assurance and Quality Assurance Authority, the BQA in Bahrain, we have refined almost 2 years ago the framework to make it become more agile and inclusive of both HEC and BQA's criteria, while previously they used to be 2 separate institutional reviews. Now we have one unified framework to do that, and we have a corresponding toolkit to help higher education institutions achieve quality assurance in a much transparent and agile manner. Also, we have our NQF, which was the first in the region after being benchmarked with international standard. The NQF ensures consistency in learning outcomes. So similar to what my colleagues mentioned, we're looking at outcome-based learning and education across institutions, and we're promoting international recognition of Bahraini qualifications across many regions. One key innovation is the integration of AI-driven learning analytics in university accreditation and review processes. So for example, HEC now, which is the Higher Education Council, now requires institutions to implement digital tracking systems for graduate employability to ensure that curricula remains aligned with global trends. We have also mandated at HEC that this is conducted by a designated and structured unit within each institution. Something that is more recent is Skills Bahrain, which is a portal that follows the Labor Fund. But all the higher education institutions, all the entities in the country have contributed to this portal. And this portal provides all the information about employability, about all the programs in higher education across different criteria and across different sectors. So by collaborating with higher education institutions, Skills Bahrain ensures that curricula are, first of all, industry relevant. It's integrating workforce development, and vocational skills are being at the forefront of this. Additionally, we had we regulated in particular internship with a highly refined policy that was benchmarked. This policy provides different pathways for vocational students who want to pursue education in academia.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Yeah, if I just add that we've also regulated online and hybrid learning that meet quality standards, academic integrity, and also employability outcomes, whilst also ensuring academic integrity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Diana, for this very insightful response. And again, throughout the panel, we'll have multiple round of questions, hopefully. But let's hear very quickly also from our colleagues from Oman, from Dr. Jocha. If you could share the very same question, let us know what's happening in Oman. Dr. Jocha, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Well, technology never be a friend.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us in this insightful discussion, Dr. Nariman. And I would like to say hi to everyone. Well, I think what my colleagues just shared, we are very much similar, especially we are from the same region, from the same context almost, especially when it comes to Bahrain and UAE, our neighbors. In Oman, the OAAQA, which is our, independent authority for quality assurance, we have been ourselves in different transformations since the start. We started in 2001, and you can imagine how many transformation we have gone through. Likewise, the higher education system, we have been evolving both. And the good thing that the learning process for both the sector and the higher education sector in Oman, by the way, it's not very old. It just started in 1970s. So the space between us and the sector is not really far. So the growth is almost happening by very good responsive and responsive needs for the sector. So our model or our framework, in fact, has transformed from different ways. I can tell at the beginning, for example, when we first developed the system, which is the institute, which rely on institutional accreditation and program accreditation, for example, the institutional accreditation at the beginning has two stages, which is the quality audit, and then it goes to the summative approach, which is the accreditation. And why we had that approach? Because we believe that building capacity at the beginning for the quality assurance require that kind of development. So we moved away on 2022, I would say, with the new approach of having only institutional accreditation with one phase instead of two phases. But the first phase used to be very beneficial for the sector. So this is kind of evolving. Our system is outcome-based, I can tell, also process-based, because without having a good process, the robust process within the system, the outcomes will never happen as a sudden. It's just always built through certain robust systems. So we have we developed our system where it has a process that focus on the internal quality system in the institution. We are trying to move from the compliance of the standards to the enhanced system, where we enhance any development and come close to the institution, understand their movements, their systems closely. Maybe the shift toward more personalized system, where we have certain models that respond to each institution. This is something we are very keen to have maybe in the future, but currently the compliance with the standards is vital for us. Likewise, what's really new focus with us, the international feasibility of the higher education institution is one of the things that we are focusing on. The graduates, of course, which are our golden coin in the higher education, is we are trying to focus with our new revised system on the alignment between the workforce and the graduates from the institutions. Innovation is one component that we focused on. We used to focus on the research, but now innovation is part of it. Some other things that we already focused on, the the relation between and the engagement of the institution with the professional bodies is something that we also put on our model. So you can see a lot of similarities with the models. Yeah.
True. Thank you very much, Dr. Joha. And probably we'll go now to Dr. Mazen. Maybe Dr. Mazen, you can also share with us what is happening at the level of the National Committee of Qualification and Academic Accreditation in Qatar.
Thank you, Dr. Nariman, and for inviting me to join this distinguished panel, and thanks to the audience. NCQAA in Qatar, probably the youngest in the room here. We were just created like 2 years ago, and being young, I think we got the advantage that we have very well established systems in the region and worldwide, and we studied all of those systems and try to design our set of standards so that we can capitalize on the best experiences around us. I think for us, responding to the changes that are going in the region and worldwide, the way we designed our set of standards, we tried to focus. Another way to say outcome-based accreditation, we say that we focus on the what, not the how. We try to design our standards so that we have one whole standard that's dedicated to how the institution is making impact and how it is meeting stakeholders' expectation. This way, we can cater for the different kinds of institutions we have here in Qatar, like big ones, small ones, private, special purpose, like colleges, so that each one, as part of the accreditation process, should define their stakeholders. They have to show how those stakeholders participated even early on in articulating the mission of the institution, all the way of involving them throughout the education process, and after graduations, getting their feedback about the students that they are receiving. So this way, I think we can have more effective way of assessing the performance of those institutions. From the National Qualification Framework, I think what we did in the past 2 years, when we came to creation, we found an existing qualification framework that we felt that we need to revise. So we are about to finish revising it. We reduced the number of levels of the qualification frameworks from 11 to 8, so that it's easier to be mapped by most of the qualification frameworks around the world. But more importantly, we are creating tracks. It used to be one track. We are creating tracks especially for the vocational and technical track, and we are developing policies to make it easy for students to move between tracks, as well as we will be allowing to do partial listing to cater for like shorter term degrees like macro credentials and those credentials arising from like recognizing prior learning. So we want to make our qualification framework more agile, more dynamic to cater for the different changes that we are witnessing. But more or less, as was mentioned, like all the efforts are in line with what's going on with our neighbors, and we thank them. We learn a lot from their experiences, and as they always say, we did not start from what others end. We are starting from what the best others end, and we are lucky that we live in a region that education is a top priority for the nations, and experiences are really advanced.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mazen. And I think that now we have some sort of broad understanding on how every agency is actually adapting to all these rapid changes. But before we zoom into very specific questions addressing the different points that were mentioned, maybe we can capture the audience views in terms of, their perspective on which key trends they see impacting the most their institutions over the next 5 years. So if I can kindly ask you to actually scan the barcode, or you could go to www.menti.com and enter the code. And what we are asking you is really, from among the 5 trends that have been presented and that were mentioned in Vicky's presentation, but also in our colleagues' intervention, which ones do you see impacting the most your higher education, your institutions. So I'll give you just a few seconds, and then maybe Udaya, you can share with us in a bit the results so we can have the audience perspectives and see if there is an alignment in terms of priorities between external quality assurance agencies and institutions. So just we'll allow a few seconds, and then we can have the results. Please do scan the barcode. Alternatively, you can go to www.menti.com. It's on the chat box, and you can enter the code that is mentioned below. Udaya, can we have the results? Okay, so maybe we can have them zoomed. So I think that we all expected pretty much artificial intelligence to be the big winner. Okay, we'll allow 15 more seconds. If you did miss the barcode, please go to www.menti.com and enter the code. You have the code is written on the top of the screen. So we can see that the #1 trend so far is with artificial intelligence and technological advancement, followed by the focus on skills and employability. And I think all of our colleagues have mentioned, this element. Professor Ala spoke a lot about what they're doing in Egypt in that regard. Then sustainability comes in, and then the rise of non-traditional pathways of education, macro-credentials, stackable degrees, online and hybrid learning. And last came international. Well, actually, they are now equal, both internationalization and globalization. So thank you very much for your views, and hopefully throughout the rest of the panel discussion, we will continue to address these various points. Can we stop the sharing for now? Thank you very much. Now I'd like to go very specifically into more specific questions with our esteemed panelists. And I'll probably start with Dr. Mazen. Dr. Mazen, the integration of artificial intelligence in higher education, I think, as we've heard from Vicky's presentation, is transforming the way quality is defined and measured in teaching, learning, and institutional performance. AI-driven tools are enabling us to offer personalized learning experiences to our students, to adapt to their individual needs, and to enhance their level of engagement. But at the same time, as we all know, AI is being leveraged for data-driven decision-making, improving assessment of student outcomes, and institutional effectiveness. So, however, as we all know, the widespread adoption of AI has introduced many challenges. Vicky talked about academic integrity, the ethical use of AI-generated content, and issues related to data privacy and bias, which poses a lot of pressure on institutions to strike the balance between harnessing AI potential and ensuring rigorous, fair, transparent quality assurance mechanisms. So in light of all of this, how is the rise of AI, in your view, impacting the definition and measurement of quality in higher education, particularly in areas related to teaching effectiveness and student learning outcomes? You're on mute, Dr. Mazen.
Oh, sorry. Well, honestly, I don't believe that the rise of AI is affecting the definition of quality. When I was last week in Kuwait, I was in my introduction to the lecture that I was giving, I mentioned that one of the best definitions I heard previously on quality, the definition of quality is like love. It's hard to define, but it's easy to see its effect. So the definition itself, I think even before AI, we did not have a unified definition for quality. I think what matters most is what's the effect on students? Are the universities adopting this AI tools? I think it affects more assessments, the personalization, the delivery of courses. All of these are redefined. The way we are doing this are really redefined. Maybe to reach the quality that we have in mind, it's different now. It's easier in some aspects, but it's more more difficult for faculty to learn those new tools. So the burden now, I think, not on us as accrediting agencies. The burden is more on the higher education institutions side to come up with first the right governance for adopting those tools, to redefine what's plagiarism, to redefine what's cheating, what's accepted from students, what's not accepted, and then provide the right training for faculty members. I always, like when talking to faculty members, they always say AI is a tool, and we are required to learn those tools and to embed them in our classrooms. But at the same time, on the administrative side, where we need to do a lot of administrative work as faculty members, it's not getting easier. The university should adopt more AI tools to make our life easier, so that we can learn tools and give time to students. So in a short term, what I'm saying is that quality will remain the same. We'll see the effect on students, but the delivery is affected, the way we deliver the programs.
Thank you very much. And I hope it's not copyrighted. I like the definition of quality is love. So
it's not my definition.
It's not yours. So,
yeah,
so we need to quote whoever has said it. I think
I heard it. I should go back and see to give the credit to the person. I heard it in one of the webinars and I really liked it. I wrote it down, but I forgot to write the name of the person who mentioned it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mazen, for your insights. I'll go to Dr. Samira. Dr. Samira, in response to the increasing demand for flexible learning pathways, accrediting agencies worldwide have been updating their quality assurance standards to incorporate non-traditional educational modes. For instance, in Australia, Canada, the UK, Estonia, Spain, the Netherlands, and name it, they have been introducing national micro-credential frameworks, defining micro-credentials and establishing principles to ensure their quality and their recognition. How is the CAA, how are the CAA standards or the new standards evolving to accommodate non-traditional learning modes, such as online, hybrid learning, micro-credentials, alternative pathways to meet industry demands while maintaining quality and upholding recognition? In particular, that the UAE was pretty much one of the very first countries in the Arab region to establish standards for online learning.
Yes, thank you, Nariman. I think, first of all, the outcome-based evaluation framework. So when we shift from being gatekeeper to focus on the outcome and the impact, actually, we are enabling online, and we can't see that it's really matter the methods of delivery as far as the outcome had been met and the impact is very strong and positive when it comes to the students and the labor market. So having said that, currently, again, because of the framework, the outcome-based framework, recently we accredit many stackable credential programs in the UAE. We have a solid and a clear framework for micro-credentials. Even before accrediting stackable credentials program, there had been several micro-credential programs that had been approved and delivered. And I think it's, again, I liked what Vicky said in the beginning about the genie, because it's so right. Yeah, when we are now in an era, we need to know how to communicate with this generation. So we can't go back. There is no way to go back. So the outcome-based, so the question itself, sorry, Nariman, it's a bit outdated because so far, right now, we are not talking about online hybrid. If anyone is studying in medical program or medicine program or nursing, fully online, definitely they are not going to be employed. This means their KPIs, their assessment, their performance will be affected. So it's, I think the outcome-based framework will be sufficient enough to help the universities and give them, again, as I said, give them the freedom to deliver in the way that help to achieve those KPIs. And we, as a regulator, we are making sure that we are supporting the universities in order for them to achieve those goals, and by approving micro-credentials, stackable credentials.
Right. So Dr. Samira, I mean, the question comes in from many institutions that have been asking, would the new standards allow institutions, obviously depending on the type of program and the nature of program and students it accommodates, but will the CAA allow institutions to offer full-fledged online program where appropriate and suitable?
Definitely.
Okay.
As far as they will guarantee for me the outcome that the students will not be lost in between when they are graduating with old skills, which is not needed for the labor market, we are fine. As far as their students will be employed and their research is going to impact the UAE.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Dr. Samira, for your inputs on that. And I'm sure that this is actually reassuring to many institutions who have been wondering whether this is going to happen in light of all the new recent changes that have been introduced. Dr. Diana, can we go back to you? I think that one of the things that we have spoken about and that was touched upon in some of the responses of our esteemed panel is ensuring is around student readiness for the workplace. Now, ensuring student readiness for the workplace and bridging the industry academia gap requires not only a strong academic foundation, but also meaningful industry engagements. In your perspective, how can external quality assurance agencies actively foster such a strong university industry ecosystem by promoting things like curriculum co-creation with the industry, collaborative research, expanding opportunities for students to gain real-life experiences through maybe apprenticeship and co-op programs and other work-integrated learning models? Dr. Diana, do we have you there? Dr. Diana? Okay. So I'm not too sure if anyone would like to take the question, because I think that it is one thing, we talk a lot about university industry collaboration beyond just, having advisory board and, sending survey instruments, but really creating that ecosystem. So I'm not too sure if any of our esteemed panelists would like to address that question.
I'll be happy to pitch in
Professor.
some thoughts here. I think we need to move from the silos that we used to have in terms of tracks or qualification types, where we have academic, we have technological, we have vocational, to a more diverse range, where we allow through our national qualifications frameworks the inter-movement from one track to another track. While doing this, I think it's very important to move away from the traditional mantras, and I don't want to say stereotypes, but the constant desire by academics to avoid the inclusion of professionals who are not from an academic background to participate in the education process. So we see in many other countries in the West that for a long period of time there have been professors of practice, for example. There has been some professionals coming from the industry who have a say and a serious and significant say in how the curricula should look like. A very good example of this is the reluctance of many of the accrediting agencies to have non-academic personnel join or become reviewers. While we see in other countries that the review team that looks into whether it be institutional accreditation or program accreditation, that the presence of professionals and practitioners on those teams is quite often the norm. So we really need to bridge that in order to bridge that gap from a quality assurance standpoint. We need to remove these constraints that we have on participation by non-academic staff in the education process, especially the higher education process.
Thank you very much. And I think this really echoes what is happening globally in terms of really, not working in silos, as you've mentioned rightly. Let me go to Dr. Jocha. Dr. Jocha, many countries in the GCC region, and I believe, and Dr. Samira can correct me if I was mistaken, the CAA, like the NCAA in Saudi Arabia, because of the evolving demands of the global workforce, external quality assurance agencies have been implementing concept of the competency-based framework for some disciplines in order to align with the educational outcomes and with the industry needs. Is the integration of such competency-based framework with national qualification framework part of the Oman Academic Accreditation Authority for Quality Assurance focus? And do you anticipate, if that was the case, any challenges? I mean, we know how much institutions struggle whenever there's a new national qualification framework in terms of alignment and so forth. So please, if you can share your views and insights. Dr. Jocha, you need to unmute.
The straightforward answer, yes, we have the competency-based, what I said, the based system where the national qualification framework respond in each level and qualification with set of skills and competencies and knowledge wise, and also the set of skills needed for each discipline. But to be honest, it's not very specific as per to discipline, instead of as per to the level. We have 10 levels in the national qualification framework in Oman, starting from the preschooling system until the PhD. So with that progress of the levels, the competencies and the skills is described very well across the levels. We are responding to, in that levels, what is unique in Oman, and maybe it's also maybe with other Gulf countries, that we are not only focused on the academic side of these levels, although when we say master and PhD, it's always come to mind the academic area, but in fact our system is responding also to the vocational, technical, and also the technological and professional certificates. There is a huge, there is a big dialogue here in the country whether we should continue with the traditional academic education, or we should expand to the and have that paradigm shift to the other type of education. And to be honest, maybe we need also to just come away from the traditional thinking that we need the normal traditional learning in the schooling system, whereby most of the countries still insist of having 12 grades until you go to the university, which is the pre-education or pre-higher education system. For me, maybe just if you give me just one minute, just to think of, what we are thinking of, and this is not something that we are working on currently, but this is the thing that we think as experts, as people working on education, we need to just get away from the status quo that we need only normal traditional ladder of education to where the micro credentials, for example, it's coming and it's a fact, although still we are not having the system that is quality assurance that micro credentials yet. But this is the fact. We are dealing with different generation. Their patience toward education is not like the old generation, or we are dealing with generation Z, beta, alpha. So the type of education, type of skills, type of competencies needed is quite different. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jocha. And I'll probably come back to Professor Ala, and we'll move from the topic of employability and graduate skills and competencies to something a bit different. And it was mentioned as one of the priority areas by our audience. And many external quality assurance, Professor Ala, do we have Professor Ala with us? I know that Dr. Diana is facing a technical problem. Do we have Professor Ala with us? Otherwise, we'll have to skip the question. Okay, so maybe we can come back to the question in a bit. In the meantime, maybe we can ask our audience about their perspective. Oh, Professor Ala is back here. So, okay,
Yes.
thank you. So, Professor Ala, the question is really about external quality assurance agencies in many parts of the world have been increasingly advancing sustainability by embedding sustainability criteria into their evaluation framework. If I'm not mistaken, the UK Quality Assurance Agencies has published a handbook for monitoring and evaluating education for sustainable development in universities. Now, from your experience, what role are external quality assurance agencies in our particular region, and maybe in Egypt in more specific, playing when it comes to monitoring and evaluating universities' sustainability efforts to ensure meaningful progress and alignment with global standards?
So we do have in our standards, within our standards, sustainability and community development as well, community service and development of community economies. So we look at sustainability in terms of, within the lens of the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And we encourage universities to adopt or to demonstrate that they are targeting some of those. It's not a one size fits all, so we're not specifying how they can do it. But one of our standards targets or is focused on sustainability from the broader perspective of the SDGs. At the program level, we're not as keen about it per se, even though it's embedded within the links to the job market. It's embedded within the program, and it's and the link to the community or the community service aspect of the program, the innovation aspects of the programs, but we stress it particularly at the institutional accreditation level.
Right. Thank you very much. And maybe we can get one more time the insights from our audience about the top 3 challenges they believe are most critical for quality assurance in their institution. And so just the top 3 challenges, you might have a lot of them, but we just want the top 3 challenges. And perhaps we can, after that, we'll give you a few seconds to scan the barcode. If you did not close the application, you don't need to scan it again. It will go to the next question automatically. So let's see their perspective in terms of what are the top challenges for them from an institutional perspective. Udaya, can we share the results, please? Okay, would you be able to expand it? Thank you very much. So what do we see from here is 70% talks about alignment with international standards as one of the biggest challenges they face, followed by, well, it's actually moving, so maybe we should wait for a few seconds. Still aligning with international standards and keeping with technological advancement are the biggest 2 winners. Followed by basically aligning with educational outcomes with evolving workforce, balancing, recognizing online learning is another challenge, ensuring employability. So what we can see is it actually keeps on changing. So it's very difficult to actually make an answer until we have all the votes. Let's give it 5 more seconds. Okay, so it continues to be alignment with international standards is one of the biggest challenge institutions have faced, along with keeping up with the technological advancement. And then at 51%, we have aligning with educational outcomes. So I think this pretty much is something we might have expected. I'm not too sure if any of our esteemed panelists expected some different results. Maybe you'd like to comment on that, anyone? And can we stop the sharing? So I think that pretty much international, aligning with international standards is a key thing. And we'll talk more about that hopefully in a bit. But I'd like to go back to another question, and maybe because we had Dr. Hala a couple of times, we're having also Professor Ala again now. Professor Ala, and I will ask also Her Excellency Dr. Jocha to answer the same question. One of the issues is that the higher education sector globally is often criticized for its lack of agility compared to other institutions, despite how much we say we are agile and responsive, struggling to keep up with pace of rapid external change. And there's often a tension between institutional responsiveness and sometimes the slower pace of external quality assurance agencies and their approvals. Now, in your view, how can universities effectively balance the need of the rapid adaptation to external challenges and changes while meeting the requirement and expectation of external quality assurance?
Well, I think it's very important that we remember that we should be agents of progress and agents of change rather than obstacles along the way as external quality assurance bodies. So if we say, how can the university or the institutions adapt to the needs of the quality assurance agencies? I think that's the wrong question. We should look at it as how can we as quality assurance agencies keep up with the rapid rate of change in technology and in education, in the education ecosystem in general, with things such as artificial intelligence. And I think we've done a reasonable job in the region here compared to other regions at keeping up with that. But one thing that we started doing in Egypt is that we are revising our standards and our criteria now on an annual basis. We're not introducing dramatic changes, but we don't wait for 5 years before we say we're going to revise our standards. So we have a 2024 edition, we have a 2025 edition, we're going to have a 2026 edition where we rapidly adapt. And a key aspect of this is making sure that we're always connected with the industry while doing this. We're communicating with them. Sorry, not the industry. Of course, the industry, but also the institutions, so that this triangle of employees, education providers, and quality assurance, external quality assurance agencies, that we're in the same loop all the time.
Right. Thank you very much, Prof. Ala. And I think the CAA is also following the same thing, looking at agility, removing bureaucracy, and so forth. And this is really a big relief for institutions who really want to be responsive and creative. So I think a lot of good things is happening within our region, in fact. Dr. Jocha, can we have your perspective? Dr. Jocha? Technology is always a challenge. So maybe until we get Dr. Jocha, I can ask Dr. Diana. Dr. Diana, the Kingdom of Bahrain, as you've mentioned before, has positioned itself as a pioneer in quality assurance and accreditation process. And you were one of the very first countries in the region that have established a national qualification framework. What current consequential key milestone have been achieved, especially with reference to the ongoing collaboration between the Higher Education Council and the Bahrain Quality and Training Authority? And maybe some colleagues might not know what these two bodies are exactly.
Yes, thank you very much. Basically, just to clarify, HEC is the Higher Education Council, and it's the regulating body for higher education. It's the one that bestows accreditation to higher education institutions and programs, and license it and monitors its day-to-day operations. The quality assurance, the BQA, is the supportive body that provides institutional review, program review. So it is the body that basically monitors quality education. So I mentioned this before, the process used to be done separately. Institutional review and program review used to be done separately. Now there is a lot of collaboration made between the HEC and the BQA. And as I mentioned, there have been some improved framework for institutional review, which automatically leads to institutional accreditation in addition to other measures imposed by HEC itself. We have also seen an expansion of the national qualification framework. So as Professor Ala said, we've been having all of those changes, rapid changes, becoming agile, and we're reviewing all the policies on a yearly basis and looking at the best practices. So currently there was a 34 increase in vocational institutions that were reviewed or that were placed on the NQF, and a 29%, approximately 29% rise in higher education qualifications registered under the NQF. We've also had a number of graduate employability initiatives and quality assurance initiatives. We've mandated that higher education institutions have their own policies for following up on students using AI, and we've strengthened our accreditation policies by having the accreditation committee mandate a number of requirements and have its own mechanism for ensuring that higher education institutions are being pushed towards higher global competitiveness, basically.
Thank you very much, Dr. Diana. And we'll go to Dr. Mazen Hasna. And Dr. Mazen, would like to know, what role does the Qatar National Committee for Qualification and Academic Accreditation play in overseeing the quality of transnational education offered by branch campuses in the country? How can the committee ensure that the TNE programs balance the relevance of the curriculum to Qatar National Vision 2030 and national priorities while maintaining the academic standard of the mother institutions?
Okay, in principle, our committee is in charge of assessing all higher education institutions that operate in Qatar, regardless if they are local, governmental, military, or even branch campuses. And by law, currently in Qatar, either you have a governmental university or you should be a branch of an well-reputed like international university. So by law, the design of the curricula should follow that of the main campus. What we have when we designed our standard, since we have a lot of branch campuses here, we put like one of the review criteria. We have 48 review criteria in our 5 standards, and one of them, it mandates that the quality assurance for the programs that are offered in the branch campuses here in Qatar, it should be owned by the local institution. It should not be outsourced to the mother campus or to anywhere else. So that we want to make sure that locally, the branch campus that's operating with a local partner to offer those degrees, they should be in charge of quality assurance, and they should prove to our committee when we go and visit them that they have oversight over the selection of faculty, they have oversight of the how they close the loop. So this we put this as part of our accreditation. And honestly, I don't think we will be facing any challenge in that regard because the licensing process has been very thorough in Qatar for allowing those branch campuses from one side. From the other side, part of the transnational education that we have here in Qatar was well planned by the country under the umbrella of Qatar Foundation, where some branch campuses were invited to open in Qatar within a well-planned strategy to enhance the higher education system in the country.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Mazen. And probably because we're talking about transnational education, we will direct the question to Dr. Samira. Dr. Samira, Your Excellency, the UAE has positioned itself as a key global hub for transnational education. And recently, the Education 33 strategy aims to further expand these by increasing the number of international students by 50% and achieving a tenfold growth in education tourism by 2033. In many countries which have very similar ambitions, like Australia, Canada, and the UK, they've been structured policies to ensure international students not only receive quality education, but also integrate to the local academic, social, and economic landscape. Now, how does the CAA sees the role of international students in shaping the higher education sector in the country, and what strategies can be implemented to enhance the academic and social experience of those students while fostering their connection with the community as a whole?
Yeah, thank you, Nariman. I think international students, by the way, UAE, I think I think this is one of the highest KPI that we have, or the indexes on the international level for the internationalization within the UAE. So having said that, again, when we are talking about higher education, the ultimate objective is to empower and to support the students and to make sure that they have the quality of higher education, regardless if they are national or international. So having said that, their presence enhance the cultural and academic exchange, enriching the students' learning experience. Also, it enhances the global rankings and reputation, as diversity is a factor in many international rankings. They are also important in economic contribution, fostering investment in education and workforce development. It's very important to have high quality of higher education, especially if you know about many initiatives that we have on the government level, such as Golden Visa, many other initiatives where we would like to attract the talents. And you cannot attract the talent without their families. So we have to make sure that their family will stay in a safe environment, in a safe country, and with high quality of education and health. So having said that, to enhance their experience, the CAA promotes policies to ensure international students receive academic and social support, easing adaptation, strength career pathways through industry partnership. So going back to the outcome-based evaluation framework, those KPIs that had been in place to ensure the employability, the research contribution, it's all focused on students, regardless of their nationality. So it's very important that we make sure that our students not only excel in higher education, our role is also to make sure that we retain those talents, those skills within the UAE. And even if they decide to move outside the UAE to continue or to work, it is really very important for us to make sure that they join with high skills, and they are equipped with high skills to join best market, best industry outside the UAE. So having said that, I believe it's not only the CAA, it's the whole ecosystem in UAE has to focus on ensuring that our international students receive high quality of education.
Thank you very much, Dr. Samira, and you're really spot on. It's not just the CAA or the Ministry of Higher Education. Dr. Samira, I'd like to continue with you since we're talking about internationalization and all. Now, many universities across our region and the GCC and other Arab countries, but in particular in the UAE, we see that more and more universities are pursuing international, institutional, and discipline-specific accreditation. Now, how is the CAA supporting institutions in aligning these efforts while minimizing the burden of overlapping sometimes processes, but also, causing accreditation fatigue and overwhelm, from multiple accreditation requirements? And I know the CAA has really some commendable steps in that. So, Dr. Samira, if you could share with us.
Yeah, thank you. I think we had a meeting again earlier this year, maybe with Vicky, and we highlighted this point that after all, when we thought about this, the government thought about the new approach for outcome-based evaluation framework rather than input focus. The whole objective was to look at the whole journey from the university perspective. So after all, the university receives the CAA commissioners for review. They are receiving the inspectors and for quality assurance, and they are the one who is receiving international accreditation bodies for doing all to ensure the quality of higher education. So according to the new outcome-based evaluation framework, if the universities manage to get their international accreditation for their programs, or for their programs, let's say focus now on the programs, then they are going to get a review, recognition of their renewal of program accreditation immediately the moment they get. Recently, we have one of our universities where they get immediate re-accreditation for 7 programs who got, those programs got ABIT approval. Similarly, many other universities now, the moment they get the program accreditation for their international program accreditation from reputable accreditation agencies, we are considering that sufficient for re-accreditation of their programs. In addition to this, we have, so when there are international accreditation visits within the UAE, the Commission of Academic Accreditation also they are collaborating with international agencies to have joint visits, international visits or visits with the international agencies. We are having many MOUs that will not only be off-the-shelf MOUs that signed and kept without any real effect or impact. What we are going to do, we are going to, again, as we discussed with Vicky, I'm referring to Vicky because Vicky is here, but we had many other discussions with other entities. We are looking forward to activate all of those MOUs to make sure that, again, the journey of the universities are seamless, the quality of higher education are maintained, or even moved or improved in coming years, inshallah.
Right, thank you very much, Dr. Samira. So we expect to see more joint reviews being done between the CAA and international accrediting agencies. I believe the CAA is already doing that with AACSB as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, with many other accreditation. But again, the most important thing, if the university did their effort to get accreditation for programs from international reputable agencies, that will be sufficient for us to renew their program accreditation.
Right. I'd like probably, maybe to skip, with your permission, a couple of questions, because I'd like to actually have the opportunity to take questions from the audience. But one question that I would like all of you to answer is, obviously, you've spoken a lot about what's going on in terms of changes and adapting to emerging trends. And my questions to you is, how do you envision the role of national accrediting agencies evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? And whoever would like to start by answering that question.
Okay, can I start?
Yes,
since my mic is unmuted? Moving forward, I think the accreditation agencies definitely need to utilize first of all, reconsider or revisit the standards and the policies, and utilize the technology and AI in automating the processes, and leverage the technology in enhancing the process of accreditation. So I'll stop there.
Dr. Samira, just can I ask you a question? Would we anticipate to see maybe more autonomy to institution, maybe giving them a degree granting power rather than having them go through every accreditation for every program, especially that we have the risk assessment process? So, at least for those that are low risk, is it something that, would be in the forecast in the next 5 to 10 years?
I'll tell you, let us just learn how to walk, inshallah, to run. We just launched this framework. Let's see how it will evolve. Definitely, we have to start walking and running in an exponential manner in order to be in line with what's happening worldwide. But to begin with, let's first see how things will progress.
I'm confident under your leadership it will happen. Thank you so much, Dr. Samira. Anyone else from our panel?
Can I go next?
Yes, please, Dr. Adiana.
So the way I see it, I would say that given all the changes in the ecosystem, I think strategic partnership is very important, and this is something that we need to focus more on. So, for example, the Kingdom of Bahrain, we've collaborated with Times Higher Education to develop our forthcoming 10-year national strategy of higher education and scientific research, but also this kind of partnership, and also partnerships that higher education institutions would have with renowned ranking bodies or accreditation bodies, or with hosted programs, or having branches of universities in Bahrain. And this is something that we've witnessed a lot lately, but this is something that we aspire to have more of. Where I also think that when it comes to research and innovation, we need to be looking at policies on a more agile manner to encourage more collaboration at the faculty level and university level, to ensure also that we have more visibility. When it comes to what I would expect to have in the next decade, we will likely adapt more AI and data analytics and quality assurance processes, accreditations, and so on. We will be more seeking more international recognition of qualifications, of our qualifications, and welcoming more international investment in our higher education ecosystem. Maybe more of online and hybrid learning regulations, and the strengthening industry collaboration by requiring institutions to embed workplace learning in all programs. We have already started looking at micro-credentials and RPL recognition of prior learning. We have looked at co-creations of accreditation standards. We're looking at how we can work together with all the stakeholders to enhance certain policies when it comes to students moving from one pathway to another, when it comes to recognizing all different higher education learning pathways.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Lots to look forward to, and probably lots of opportunities also to work together across the region. Yes, Your Excellency, Dr. Joha, tafadali.
Yeah. Well, I envision the role of while we are envisioned that higher education institution will change and there will be a new outlook for that institutions, I can see that our role as an accreditation bodies as well should be. It is not only will be, we have to adapt new and new flexible systems to be aligned with the changes happening in the higher education institution. You asked me earlier, unfortunately, the technical glitch avoided me from responding.
I'm sorry.
It was a very interesting question about the agility in higher education. And I think when we look at agility, we shouldn't deal with higher education or the education by itself when it comes to agility in a similar way when we deal with other sectors, because agility in higher education might identify differently and has different way on looking at it. We are dealing with long-term product, which is the education. So we cannot change the education immediately and responding immediately to whatever change is happening, because that takes a long time. If we look at the universities, for example, if they put the seed now, they will see it after 4 years if they are focusing on the academic degree. That's why the micro-credentials might be a solution, a quick solution for having quick upskilling and reskilling for the graduates. But with the current phase, I think it's justifiable of having some slow responses from the higher education sector when it comes to any evolving trends. Because changing the higher education is not different. If you put the seed now, you will not find it tomorrow. You'll find it after sometimes, and you can see that in the market as well. I can see this happening especially with the private higher education sector, where they are more agile. I see them than public institution. But still, by the time they are graduating students from a program which is highly needed now, by the time students graduated, it's just become obsolete and the program is not needed anymore. So the changes, it's a must. Likewise, what these changes, I think the adaptive and flexible system with accreditation is highly needed, and we should go away from the traditional accreditation cycle that comes after 5 years, with some more agile accreditation model that keep checking on the institution quality all the way and respond to any new trends coming to the sector.
Thank you very much, Dr. Julha. I think our panelists, gentlemen, we're letting the ladies first speak. So would we hear very quickly from either Professor Ala or Dr. Mazen?
I'll just say one thing. Like, I hope, since we are new, like 5 years from now, when we finish going through the accreditation process of all universities in Qatar, our plan is to finish them like within next 4 years. Now we started already. I hope after that, when they look back to us, they say that our committee was not a hindering power that stopped them from advancing or from adopting new things, but rather they look at us as like a critical friend who was honest in telling them what might go wrong with their operations. But by no way, we don't want to be looked at as a gatekeeper or as some entity that will prevent them from moving forward. But I agree with all of my colleagues what they said about the future.
Thank you, Dr. Mazen. Professor Ala?
Yeah, I think I agree with what has been said. It's difficult to know how things are going to be in 4 or 5 years from now, but I just hope that we're able to keep up with the pace of change. And I think micro credentials are going to be and are going to be much more. We're going to see a proliferation of micro credentials over the next few years, I think, because that's what employers want. That's what they need, and that's what the graduates are interested in.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I'm sorry to squeeze you in time, but in less than 30 seconds, maybe, if you had one critical message or recommendation you'd like institutions to take away from this panel discussion, what would that be? They're all waiting for your piece of advice. So maybe we can start with the gentleman this time.
Well, it's difficult to try and summarize everything in
Just
one sentence. But I think institutions need to recognize that quality assurance agencies are there to help, and we need to make sure that happens. I think at the core of quality assurance, regardless of what we discussed, I think at the core of the quality assurance is the assessment and continuous improvement. That's the one, non-changing. That's the one single constant in quality assurance, I think, is that we have to assess and continuously improve. And without that,
You've got your piece of advice, universities now. Dr. Mazen.
Just quickly, in the context of AI, the changes, I think the best advice for higher education institutions, be ready to leave your comfort zone before you are pushed out of that comfort zone in an unplanned way. So better
that is a very good piece of advice.
Yeah, better you do the move than be pushed out.
Thank you very much. Our esteemed women panelist, who wants to go first? Dr. Diana?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So I think my key takeaway is for universities to be dynamic, industry-driven, of course, and to follow global benchmarks. I liked a comment that was written in the comments that talked about professional developments and teachers. I think this is one of the key things, and to leverage AI and digital tools with the aid of enabling our faculty members and ensuring that they receive professional development practices and so on is key to ensuring that we become proactive and we survive in the ever-changing ecosystem of higher education.
Thank you very much. I would agree that capacity building is really important, not just for AI, but across all areas. Either Your Excellency, Dr. Samira, or Your Excellency, Dr. Jocha, any one of you would like to go first?
Okay. My short key message here. Technology is a gift, and I think the new generation of higher education institutions or students are very lucky having this technology. But with that gift, I think we need to use this gift wisely, and we need also to make sure that some skills are not disappearing by having this technology, especially critical thinking and the learning expected from students to do it by by doing
Yes.
themselves. Yeah.
I think, Dr. Jocha, you're right. I was just reading an article recently about the over-reliance of the new generation with AI, and this is something a bit worrying that we need to be cautious of. Dr. Samira.
Thank you, Nariman, and thank you, everyone. I think one key message is that we as accreditation agencies, I think it's no longer that we should be the one who tells the universities what to do and what not to do. We are here to hear from the universities. They are the treasure that we have in the higher education sector. All the cookings, all the experiments, everything happening within the universities, we want them to think disruptively in a positive way, to let us know how we can enable that disruptiveness in this era, because no matter what framework that I will set, no matter what criteria I will put, if the universities are not ready to be disruptive, to change, then we will all keep saying that it will take time to see the impact. No, we can see impact very soon, and we need to catch up with what's happening outside. So we as accreditation agencies are enablers. Let us know how to be positively disruptive in the right way. Thank you.
Stronger collaboration. I think this is something the CAA has been really good at doing, creating more links and platforms where universities and regulators come together. Thank you so much. As we say in Arabic, لا يمل من الحديث مع حضراتكم. Thank you so much. We'd like to take just 3 maybe questions, Dr. Mahinor. Some of there's lots of great questions in the Q&A session if our esteemed panelists wanted to address, but let's pick 2-3 questions before we wrap up our session.
Yeah, thank you, panelists, for your insights. We have a lot of good questions, actually. So I will try to choose the 4, maybe. So the question is for Dr. Samira. How does the outcome-based framework apply to licensing newly established universities, especially the transnational providers? And how could comparability of learning outcomes for a given program be facilitated at the national level in the absence of standardized tests?
Okay, so I'll take the first part of the question and then I'll ask you to reiterate the second part. So the first part, when it's related to the licensing new universities in the UAE, actually all the materials related to the outcome-based framework, the processes of licensure, we handled or we tackled all of these journeys in documents published on the CAA website. So anyone who's interested to learn more, all the initial draft and initial documents are published. So for an initial licensure, we simplified. So rather than, I think the process used to take 3 months, it can be granted within a week. We killed a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of bureaucratic procedures. Different scenarios are there for branch campuses. Different scenarios can be seen for different, we did not only align international accreditation for programs, we also aligned our national regulations in order to support universities. So I won't go into details because there are different journeys. So anyone who is interested can see those documents, and I'm available. You can share my email with everyone. If they need further discussion, we can discuss. So what was the second part of the question?
The second part of the question, mainly it's about learning outcomes. You have mentioned that learning outcomes is one of the 6 pillars in the new framework. So the question is, how are you able to compare the learning outcomes of a given program at a national level with the absence of standardized tests? Like all the standardized tests has been removed. or they are
I
required
think
anymore?
I don't know who asked this question, but a standardized test is not directly related to the learning outcome. If we are still in 2025 thinking that the standardized test links to the learning outcome, I think we are in trouble. So learning outcome can be measured with many other practical factors that can really measure that the students are meeting the learning outcome desired from a higher education. So I don't think learning outcome is directly connected with the standardized test.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The question is for Dr. Ala. So someone is asking about the technological university. So the question is, are you adopting the competency-based education model for these universities? And how can we implement the compliance mechanism effectively after going through the evaluation?
Again, I'll respond to the first part of the question and then ask you to reiterate the second part. For the first part of the question, yes, these universities are supposed to be an extension to what's called the technological schools. These are high schools that focus on the modern vocational education. So vocational education focusing on technology and the use of technology, the use of technology in the industries. They do use a competence-based model, all of them. And in fact, the vast majority of the education ecosystem in Egypt follows that nowadays. And the second part of the question was?
Asking about the compliance mechanism. What is the compliance mechanism that institutions should follow after they go through the evaluation?
Well, I mean, there is no requirement. I mean, the institutions need to comply with the accreditation standard. If the question is regarding what happens after that, is that there is first there is a permission to begin studies. And at that stage, the role of the accreditation agency is not in place. Once the university has graduated or the institution has graduated the first batch of students, then we can go and revisit and evaluate again to ensure that they continue to comply with the standards. There is another accrediting agency that's been formed for that purpose for vocational and technological education in Egypt, but we have a very close relationship with them.
We have a question here asking about if an institution has limited resources, however, there's an increasing demand for digital learning. How can quality assurance framework be redesigned to support innovation while ensuring equitable access and maintaining academic standards? Dr. Mazen, would you like to take this question?
Actually, I did not get exactly what's meant by the question. So if they have limited resources and they want to not to hire faculty members, they want to leverage.
They have limited resources and increased demand for digital learning. So how can quality assurance framework be redesigned to support the innovation while ensuring equitable access and maintaining academic standards? Is there a flexibility in redesigning the quality assurance frameworks in such case?
I think what we have been talking about throughout the session today is that most of the agencies are moving more towards the outcomes and more towards the impact and the stakeholders requirement. So we no longer require that the library should have books or the labs should have a lot of PCs. I think standards are more lenient now to move from the processes and from the infrastructure to focus more on the outcomes and on the what's expected from the stakeholders. So I think, most of our standards now will allow not investing a lot of money in like recruiting a lot of faculty or doing a lot of like infrastructure investments, but rather than coming up with leveraging whatever there, like even leveraging some online courses. Many of the universities, they allow students to take courses on Coursera or other platforms, and then they do they recognize them as part of their curricula. So I think there are a lot of formulas that can be done without spending a lot of money on the infrastructure or processes that are no longer needed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahinor. Unfortunately, we really are reaching to the end of the time allocated to our session. As we wrap up, I think the key messages here is we need more collaboration, more agility. We need more discussions between regulatory framework and universities and even with the wider ecosystem, closer link with the industry. Professor Ala mentioned a lot about what's happening in terms of keeping, close to the industry. So I think that the conversation will continue. A heartfelt thank you to our outstanding panelists and speakers. I'm sure that the audience appreciated all your contributions and your intervention. I also would like to thank our amazing 400 plus participants who did not leave despite how long the session was. Thank you to all of you, and we look forward to seeing you again. We will hopefully have a small report that is published out of this session. Thank you so much to all of you, and we look forward to seeing you very soon. And for all of those who celebrate or who are going to Ramadan Mubarak, ينعاد عليكم بالخير وبالبركة. شكرا جزيلا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alice.
Thank you so much. Thanks to you.
And you do have in the chat box the link for the evaluation and for the certificate for those of you who wanted to issue their certificate of attendance. Thank you so much.